Good evening, and welcome to an introduction to strategic herbalism with Stephen Horn. Thanks to all of you who are joining us live for the webinar, and also to those of you who will be watching later on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, please feel free to leave your questions and comments below. I created this course because I want to put out a message that I've been trying to teach people about for years. And I feel it's a very important message because even though it's very easy to find information about herbs and alternative remedies online, much of the information online is lacking in a holistic approach to problems. And so I want to explain the difference between the allopathic disease model and the model that I came to understand. We're going to start off with the allopathic disease model. Current model takes the disease, which is a collection of symptoms to which you apply a name or a label, and then there is kind of a standard protocol or remedy for treating that particular label. So people online will say, okay, I have arthritis, or I have this disease, or I have that disease. What do you do? And you'll immediately see people suggesting remedies, different herbs, essential oils, diets, whatever. This model is highly flawed. And when I first started using herbs and natural remedies, this is the model I followed. And I did not feel like the results I got were satisfactory. I want to explain why there's a problem with the current model of medical diagnosis. I'm going to go back to a book written in 1874 to talk about this problem. This is from John Scudder's book, Specific Diagnosis, where he says diagnosis has reference to the classification of disease according to the received nosology, which is a term that means the classification of diseases, and it means naming the affliction. In other words, giving the affliction a name. The doctors travail in diagnosis until a suitable name is delivered, and then they consult their memory and books for recipes to throw at that name, which to them seems almost an entity. It looks absurd when thus plainly stated, yet it is true to a far greater extent than the majority suppose. And it's even worse today, because today with insurance billing, the World Health Organization has computer codes that basically refer to specific diagnoses that you have to enter for the health insurance, medical tracking system, and so on and so forth. So the doctors are trying to find the right codes to put in the computer to give the correct label to your symptoms, so then they can justify to the government and also to the insurance companies that they're giving a standard treatment. Now, this is not the way traditional medicine was practiced. But going on further, having the information about a name for your disease is not really very helpful in getting you well. And John Scudder says it this way: do you mean to say, asks the reader, that the present system of nosology is useless? Yes, so far as curing the sick is concerned. Not only useless, but worthless, a curse to the physician and patient, preventing the one from learning the healing art and the other one from getting well. And if that was true in 1874, it's even worse today. And let me give you a really practical example of how this works. Let's say you've been diagnosed with arthritis. Arthritis is a Latin word. Arthro means joint, and itis means inflammation. Inflammation has four classic symptoms: heat, swelling, redness, and pain. Anytime any part of your body is painful, swollen, warm to the touch, and if it can be seen on the surface, red, that part of your body is inflamed. So arthritis means inflammation of the joints. So if one morning you wake up and your joints are red and they hurt and they're hard to move and they're a little bit swollen, you go to the doctor and he tells you you have arthritis. You've told him your symptoms in English and he's told you your symptoms in Latin. Doctors generally consider arthritis as incurable and primarily offer symptom relieving remedies such as anti-inflammatories and pain relievers to take down the swelling and ease the pain. But this is not very useful information. The question we ought to be asking ourselves is, what is causing that part of the body to be inflamed? We'll get into that more in a minute. This was years ago. I had a client who spent $800 and was given a diagnosis of idiosyncratic pancreatitis. Now, by the way, she told me this after I had done a consult with her, and using the tools I use, including muscle response testing and iridology, I had told her that she had a problem with her pancreas, and I had tested her on some possible herbs and nutritional supplements to help with her pancreas and gave her some suggestions. And she told me, yes, indeed, she had been to the doctor and been told she had idiosyncratic pancreatitis. Again, translating the Latin, idiosyncratic means of unknown origin. Pancreatitis, swelling, pain in the pancreas. So she goes to the doctor and says, I'm hurting here, and I don't know why. And he tells her, you're hurting there. It happens to be your pancreas, and we don't know why either. So much for a diagnosis. Naming diseases is not holistic diagnosis. As Samuel Thompson, the pioneer herbalist in the 1830s, the early 1800s, who influenced me a lot, said, the knowledge of a name is cumin and anise, which are tiny herb seeds. But in the knowledge of the origin of a malady lies the weightier matters of this science. This knowledge makes the genuine physician. All without it is real quackery. It is in knowing what is causing the problem that you are making a true holistic diagnosis. And it's also true, it's said in his book in the foreword, that the naming of diseases in Latin was to make it sound more pompous than it really is. And even today, this trend of trying to make diseases sound more serious or whatever is used by drug companies in their marketing agents to turn shyness into social anxiety disorder, to turn what we used to call shell shock or battle fatigue into post-traumatic stress disorder, to turn heartburn into gastroesophageal reflux disease, and on and on and on, all giving diseases names that describe the symptoms of what's happening in the body, but are not really telling us why. Why is this happening? Now, we've looked at allopathic diagnosis, the disease naming. Now let's look at the allopathic treatment. Allopathic treatment is based on reductionistic thinking. In fact, the entire scientific method is reductionistic. There is nothing wrong with reductionistic thinking or the scientific method. It is very useful. But in that method, to test a hypothesis, you need to eliminate as many variables as possible in your experiment. And because modern medicine is based in this type of scientific look at the situation, they tend to isolate a particular symptom, a particular issue in the body, and test a drug to see how it affects that particular thing. Thus, they may check that your cholesterol is high, and they test a drug to see how well it lowers the cholesterol. This is not testing the impact of that medication on your overall health. It is testing it on how it alters one particular symptom. Now, because it is reductionistic in this way, you could go to a doctor and he could say, find out you had low thyroid, you had high cholesterol, you were suffering from arthritic pain, you also had high blood pressure, and you would get a medication for each one of those individual problems as if they were all completely separate from one another, which, as I'll explain in a minute, is not true. Also, the idea of scientifically proven, to me, has a big gap in it. Studies are based on statistics. I remember statistics was a class I took in college, and I know some people like that kind of thing. I found it one of the most boring classes I ever had, probably because the teacher himself was pretty boring. But basically, it works that you have a deviation, and when you test a drug, medication, for example, a certain number of people will get relief of that symptom. A certain number of people it won't affect very well. A certain number of people it will affect adversely. And it's said to be proven if there's a statistically significant amount of people who showed improvement. What about the people who it didn't work for that actually hurt, or the people that just didn't do anything really for, or didn't work very well for? What about them? Why does the medication act differently on different people? And that is true of any medication that you would look at least in terms of symptomatic treatment. Furthermore, these studies are fairly short-term, usually 4 to 6 weeks. Most drug side effects don't show up for 6 months to a year after a person has been taking one of these medications. So this is part of why we have this reductionistic approach to healing. And we tend to apply this to natural remedies now. We look for things that are quote unquote evidence-based. And so because there are some studies, say for example, that show that people who have high blood sugar, a large percentage of them, a large enough percentage of them, showed improvement taking cinnamon. Well, cinnamon is now for blood sugar problems. But as we'll talk about in a minute, cinnamon has a multifaceted action, and not everybody who takes cinnamon is going to see positive results with it. This is where herbalism has traditionally shown because it's working on a different model, which we will talk about in tonight's webinar. John Scudder goes on to say, the student would certainly think from this teaching that getting a name for a disease was the first and principal object in the medical practice. Men pride themselves on their skill in naming diseases, calling this diagnosis. Then he adds, what can be more natural than medicines should be prescribed at names when so much trouble is taken to affix them? So again, the treatment is based on the name of the symptom that's being addressed and how it statistically impacts a majority of people. But symptomatic relief does not necessarily equate with cure. A person may be on high blood pressure medication for the rest of their life, which means that the high blood pressure medication is not curing their high blood pressure, it's merely managing it. They may be on blood sugar regulators for the rest of their life, which means that they are not curing the problem, they are managing it. Symptomatic management is the primary focus of modern herbal medicine. Part of this is if you cure a disease, the person stops buying medications. But if you manage the symptoms, they're going to continue to buy it for the rest of their life. Now, this problem is not just the fault of the medical doctors, because we've been trained to look for symptomatic relief. And that was the problem when I started out in herbs. To me, because of the way my brain had been conditioned to think, because of what I'd been taught about health and disease, a medication for a disease was supposed to relieve the symptoms. So in my mind, sometimes herbs worked and sometimes they didn't, because sometimes they seemed to ease the symptoms and other times they didn't. But what I didn't understand is what the herbs were actually doing or how to apply them intelligently according to a strategy that was based on trying to get a person well. In my experience, I've seen many people, especially those who are up and around my age, I will be 70 this year, who are on multiple prescription medications. And generally speaking, those people are not doing well. Now, although I may not be in perfect health, I'm working on trying to lose some weight that I need to get off and have a couple of other minor health problems. I don't take any drug medications. I'm managing myself with natural remedies. And people my age who do that, I find, are generally much healthier than the people who don't. Therefore, I conclude that treating symptoms does not necessarily lead one to better health. In fact, I think that the side effects of medications are often not just the medication itself, but actually the fact that the real problem is not being addressed. And so the real problem starts manifesting itself in other ways besides the original symptoms that you came in to get taken care of. So with that understanding of the medical model, diagnose a disease, meaning give it your title, your proper computer code for insurance purposes, and then the treatment that manages the symptoms of that thing, that affects that symptom in a majority of people. That's basically the model. And the fact that that model is largely carried over into people who are trying to use natural remedies. They're trying to do the same thing using the same model, and it's not really what natural healing is all about, nor is it really the approach that you want to take if you want to get people well. So this is the model I came up with that I consider to be a more accurate and more complete model. What this model says is there is you, and we call your basic genetic, and it's not totally genetic, it's also epigenetic, meaning it's how you are manifesting your physical strengths and weaknesses through your inherent makeup. Everybody has a unique, set of genes and a unique set of challenges and so forth that they have, and that is called in traditional medicine constitution. The constitution is the person who has the disease. The environment is the factors that are putting stress on the person. So, for example, you could live in a really cold climate, or you could live in a really hot climate, or you could be having a whole lot of relationship problems and be under a lot of stress, or you could be eating a really crappy diet full of chemicals and junk food and so forth. All of those are environmental impacts. Your constitution, your inherent genetic strengths and weaknesses, attempts to adapt to your environment. The body is constantly adapting to its environment, trying to maintain an internal state of balance and health. What the disease is, it is the dis-ease or the discomfort or the different symptoms that manifest as struggles the body has in trying to cope with the environmental influences. And when you understand the person who has the disease, and you understand the environmental influences that are impacting them, then you can start to understand why they are unhealthy, why there are things going wrong in their body. And you can then find a remedy. And the remedy is not to manage the disease symptoms, but to either strengthen the constitution or improve the environment, or both, in order to help the body restore normal internal balance or homeostasis, which is what health is. I believe that this is an extremely accurate and extremely useful model for understanding health and disease, and that this model is a holistic model because it looks at the big picture and really helps you identify root causes. So let's explain this a little better. Homeostasis is the maintenance of a normal internal environment in the body. Many years ago, I ran into the work of Alexis Carrel, the Nobel Prize-winning medical doctor who performed the first kidney transplant. He and his colleagues did an experiment where they kept some embryonic chicken heart tissue alive in a flask for a long period of time by filtering out waste products, putting nutrients in, keeping the temperature regulated, and so forth. And as long as they maintained that healthy condition in which the cells were being grown, the cells continued to multiply and be healthy year after year after year after year. It is the breakdown of that homeostasis, that internal environment of the body, that causes the cells to begin to malfunction. All of the systems of the body are trying to work to maintain homeostasis. So think of it as this girl riding the unicycle. In order to ride the unicycle, she has to maintain balance. And that balance is constantly having to be adjusted, fine-tuned to keep that unicycle upright. Because if she goes forward too much, she's going to fall down. She goes backwards too much, she's going to fall down. She goes to the right too much, she's going to fall down. She goes to the left too much, she's going to fall down. And so she is constantly sensing her position and making tiny adjustments to stay in balance. That's exactly what your body is doing. It is sensing what's going on in the environment and constantly making little adjustments to the body in order to try to maintain homeostasis to keep the cells of the body healthy. Now, John Scudder understood this. He didn't word it in just exactly that way, but here's what he said. Man has but one life, and it is the same in all parts. The normal manifestations of this life we call health, and the abnormal manifestations of it, disease. If we can think of disease as a method of life in a living body, we have gotten rid of an old error. So, in other words, the disease, the symptoms, are arising from the body struggling to maintain homeostasis. They are abnormal mechanisms being created to try to cope with extreme problems in the homeostatic balance of the body. They are not the disease. They are the attempt of the body to regulate the system in an abnormal way. And if you can start to recognize them as that, then it starts you on a whole different thought process about how to deal with the problem. Disease, then, he says, is not an entity. We tend to think of the disease as something that is apart from us. By naming it, we give it an identity that seems to like, I have arthritis. I have this problem, meaning that I have somehow acquired something that is not a part of me. And therefore, the model that comes to your brain is, I can attack this thing that is a foreign entity. Now, if you can get rid of that and realize that this is actually something that's going on in your body trying to cope, you will have gotten rid of this error. So here's how symptomatic relief works. And by the way, this is true for herbal remedies and other natural remedies. I'm not talking about nutrition, like food and nutrients, but I'm talking about like herbal medicine, aromatherapy, this sort of thing. It works by altering the body's signaling systems. So all of your cells inside of your body are this giant community of these individual living cells, all of which are trying to work together cooperatively to maintain homeostasis. If we relate this to humanity, we have a whole bunch of people doing a whole bunch of different jobs that help create a lifestyle where all of us can get things that we need. So for example, we have people who grow food, we have people who make clothes, we have people who build houses, we have people who run utility companies, we have people who remove the garbage from our homes and carry it to the landfill. All of these jobs working together help us all to have a nice lifestyle. Now, does the system always work? No. We know fully well that there are people who don't get all the benefits of the system, and there are also people who are not contributing to the system as a whole. So there is a communication system that tries to get people to, to work together for the good of the whole, and there is in the body. But instead of it being like information, news, and people arguing and debating over how we should approach certain problems in society, the body is secreting chemical messengers from glands through the nervous system and even through individual cells, all of which are communicating to other cells in the body that there is an imbalance and we need to make adjustments to correct it. So what happens with symptomatic relief is you're going in and you're affecting those chemical messengers. You're altering those chemical messengers to ease the symptoms. So I'm going to give you some practical example of this. So by interfering with these symptoms, it basically isn't correcting the imbalance. It's just trying to push uh, a normal process on top of an abnormal process. I think the best example of this, I hope I will talk about this, is caffeine. Caffeine does not give you energy. Contrary to all of the thing where we say energy drinks and all this stuff, all caffeine is doing is blocking the signal in your brain that tells you that you're tired. It isn't giving you rest, it isn't recharging your batteries, it's just blocking the signal that says you're tired. To me, that's the perfect example of what I'm talking about. And what happens is, since your body still gets tired and still needs rest, and you're blocking the signaling system that says you need rest, the body compensates for the caffeine by building a tolerance to it, by producing more of the receptors for the chemical messenger that tells you you're tired, so it can override the caffeine. Now, if you stop using the caffeine, suddenly you feel really, really tired because you have too many receptors, and it takes a while for your body to readjust. This is the basis of addiction, and this is why all symptom-relieving medications tend to lose effectiveness over time, is because the body is still trying to get the message through that something is wrong, and so it starts trying to find a way to override the interference with its own internal signaling systems. And just because something is natural, because coffee beans are perfectly natural, and so are cola nuts and other caffeine sources, they're plant medicine, does not mean that it's actually healing the cause of problem. You can ease symptoms with plant medications just as easy as you with drug symptoms. It's just they tend to be a little gentler acting and not uh, don't have quite as many potentials for toxicity. So switching to alternative remedies while still thinking in terms of getting rid of symptoms will not rebuild your health. Medications that are effective at relieving symptoms will eventually cause an overall decline in health and energy because the problems that the body's trying to cope with are not being solved. And here's the example of caffeine, right? I've already said, caffeine blocks the signal that you're tired. Now, when that happens, the body, you're trying to keep yourself going. So the body's stress system, the sympathetic nervous system and the adrenal glands, kick in gear to induce a state of heightened stress that basically gives you the same kind of temporary energy boost that you get when you're scared. The way I try to explain this is using your cell phone. Your cell phone has a battery. Whenever you're using your cell phone, you're discharging the battery. You have to put your cell phone on the charger to recharge the battery. When the body gets tired, it signals that you need to go rest. The body recharges its battery while you're resting. When you use caffeine or something like that to override the signal that you're tired, all your body does is dig deeper into your battery reserves, if you will, and pull up more of your reserve energy, depleting you further over time, which is why people can eventually get very jittery, nervous, high-strung, and develop a whole bunch of difficult symptoms from overuse of caffeine. Now, if you're drinking a cup of coffee first thing in the morning, your body will adapt to it and it's perfectly fine. But if you keep drinking more and more and more and pushing yourself harder and harder, it will eventually completely backfire. And this is true of all symptomatic relief. And let's give another example. Opioids. Opium poppy is a perfectly natural substance. It attaches to endorphin receptors in the brain. When you do things that are good for you, your body releases endorphins. It makes you feel good. For example, people report the runner's high. You go out and you exercise and you get some good exercise and you'll get this kind of euphoric feeling coming over you, and it kind of eases the pain because exercise is always a little bit stressful on the body, but it tells you, good job, you're doing something good for me. Or you meditate, you can release endorphins. Or get a massage, you can release endorphins. Things that are good for the body have a natural thing to decrease your pain threshold and make you feel good. Opium poppy and all of the drugs that have been derived from opium basically artificially bind to those receptors and give you that feeling without you having to do anything to take care of your body. So you're trying to shortcut the process. And of course, the body tries to adapt to that. And so the person starts craving more and more of the opioids to get the feeling they were trying to get, until they maybe take enough that they are completely dependent, or they even kill themselves. And I'll give you one other example, cannabis, specifically the THC in cannabis. This binds to receptors in the endocannabinoid system, which are designed to balance nervous and immune functions. When something stresses you and all of your stress-activated neurotransmitters and so forth go into place to get you kind of jacked up to deal with the problem, then as you're dealing with the problem, the endocannabinoid system comes in and says, okay, we got the message, things are doing better, you can stop secreting all those stress hormones, calm down, relax. Same thing with inflammation. Inflammation is the body's response to tissue damage. Once the inflammation kicks in and things look okay, the endocannabinoid system is one of the feedback systems that says, okay, we don't need the inflammation anymore, calm down, let's balance that out. So THC will downregulate your experience of pain, stress, anxiety, and inflammation. However, what happens if you use THC all the time? If you're smoking pot, especially since now they've bred strains of marijuana and have higher and higher levels of THC, so people get more of a hit from it, then what happens is you're signaling the system to do these things, even when maybe it's not the right time to do that. And the body will do the same thing it does all the time. It will down-regulate your endocannabinoid system so you have less ability to relax naturally after stress or reduce inflammation naturally after pain. Now, by the way, this is not true of CBD. CBD is another phytocannabinoid that actually enhances the activity of the endocannabinoid system, and it actually helps to counteract the effects of THC and balancing it. But I've just given you 3 examples, and we could go on with many, many more, showing you that plant medicines, things that come from plants, will work and interact with these messaging systems in the body to change the message being sent, but that can ease the symptoms, but it doesn't mean that you're taking care of what was causing the symptoms in the first place. One of the things that really woke me up to this was this quote from Samuel Thompson. He said, I had found by experience that the learned doctors are wrong in considering fever a disease or an enemy. The fever is a friend and cold is the enemy. This I found by their practice in my family until they had 5 times given them over to die. What happened is 5 times, a member of his family was sick. They had a high fever. The doctors came in and said, gave him medications to try to reduce the fever and so forth. And then they said, there's nothing more we can do. And then he, using some wisdom he learned from a widow who was an herbalist, who probably learned stuff from Native American sources, went in afterwards and he treated them by giving them cayenne pepper, putting them in a steam bath, basically causing the fever to work through to the end of it, breaking the fever, and then the person got well. So he says the fever is not the enemy. Well, I've found that out. I have the hardest time trying to explain this to people. A fever like 101, 102 is not dangerous. It's now been proven by medicine that that fever is inhibiting viral replication, slowing down the spread of the disease, which gives you a chance for the immune system to build up resistance and fight the thing off. Also, there's some traditional wisdom says that the fever is also trying to break a sweat to cleanse the blood of the irritating substances through sweating. And I found with my kids that oftentimes that was because their bowel was obstructed and they weren't eliminating well through their bowel. And by opening the bowel with an enema or some other thing that got the bowel to move, the fever would come down because the level of toxicity in the body would drop. Therefore, the level of inflammation would drop. Now, when I first got this concept, I got to thinking, dead bodies don't have runny noses. Dead bodies don't throw up. Dead bodies don't get diarrhea. All of these things are being produced by the body, and I thought they must be efforts of the body to rid itself of the disease. And the minute I got that idea, I started to try to figure out how to help the body and work with the symptoms instead of against them. Whereas before I would have been trying to make the cough go away, I instead, how do I make the cough productive? How do I help the body cough up what's irritating the lungs? How do I help the body drain out what's irritating the sinuses? How do I help the body get rid of whatever's irritating the colon and the digestive tract? How do I help the body get rid of whatever poisons the body is trying to excrete through the skin, causing the skin to become inflamed? And when I started thinking like that, and I began to apply remedies in that way, I often found I could have myself or my kids or whatever better in less than 24 hours, often within 3 or 4 or 5 hours, just by supporting what the body was trying to do instead of fighting against it. So in other words, all these things that we're talking about that are symptoms of colds and flu and these common acute viral conditions we get are actually a detoxification mechanism of the body, and they're all created by your immune system. So then I started listening to drug computers relieves all these, whatever, 7, 9 cold symptoms. And I thought, yeah, it suppresses your body's immune responses in all these 9 ways, which makes the symptoms diminish, but makes it take longer for you to get well because you're blocking what the body is trying to do to get well. So the idea is to stop that treating symptoms is trying to stop the effect without fixing the cause. And using any medication, whether it's an herb or a drug, that alters a symptom without fixing the cause is like trying to fix your car by short-circuiting the car's sensory system that's telling you, service your engine soon, you're low on gasoline, and you don't want to hear the message, so short circuit the communication system that tells you the message. Ah, the problem's fixed. I don't have to deal with it. No, it's not. The problem's still there. You're just blocking the message. It made me think of a poem by Robert Frost, who's one of my favorite poets, that starts off, "The bearer of evil tidings, when he was halfway there, remembered that evil tidings are a dangerous thing to bear," because he started thinking, I'm going to go tell this king that he's lost the battle and he's overthrown, and he's going to kill me for it. And there's something about that we want to kill the messenger rather than listen to the message. So the symptoms are the messenger. They're giving you the message, and killing, suppressing, fighting the symptoms is killing the messenger. Again, going back to Thompson, remove the cause and the effect will cease. If you get rid of what's causing the symptoms. So let's go back to this thing of inflammation. Inflammation is an essential part of the body's innate immune response. So you have 3 levels of immune defense. You have your first line of immune defense, which is the protective surfaces of your body that protect microbes and things from just getting in you as a physical barrier, the skin and the mucous membranes. And then if something breaks that physical barrier and gets past that border security, if you will, that and starts getting into the system, inflammation sets in to sequester the area in order to draw in the white blood cells to clean up the debris and prevent that from getting in any deeper. Also, if there's been a poison injected into the body, it's like just a snake bite or a spider bite or something like that, it slows the spread of the venomous toxins. It's a protective mechanism of the body, and I liken it to there's been a crime or a fire or something, and the emergency services, the fire department, the police, whatever, come to the area and they put up their little police line, do not cross, and they start fighting the problem, rounding up the suspects, trying to deal with the problem. That's inflammation. That's what the body's doing in an inflammatory response. Now, of course, what you want is for the body, when it's done, the police take down the barriers and they all depart, and everything gets working back to normal. And that will happen as long as the communication systems are there to allow the body to start reversing the inflammation and starting the healing process. And you're not doing the same irritation over and over again. Now, if you're constantly doing the same thing that damages or irritates your body again and again and again and again, the inflammation is never going to heal because the damage is consistent and ongoing. Also, again, it won't heal if you're not getting the nutrients and things your body needs. So to understand this better, let's talk about the concept of cause and effect. I'm starting to build my new YouTube channel, The Heart's Key, and one of the videos I put up is my belief about the law of the harvest, that we live in an orderly universe of cause and effect. And I believe that pain and pleasure are teachers. The sensation of pleasure and the feelings associated with this, a sense of well-being, peace, joy, happiness, health, are letting us know, hey, we're in balance. We're handling things kind of okay. The sensation of pain and its associated feelings of discomfort, disease, sadness, anger, jealousy, fear inform us something's not right. We're off balance. There's something that needs to be corrected. Your body is always talking to you. Your body has an intelligence. I mean, think about this. You're using that caffeine and your body says, oh, you're trying to pretend you're not tired. I'm going to run a workaround. I'm going to find a way to get the message through in spite of what you're doing. That's intelligence. There's an innate intelligence in your body. And that innate intelligence is trying to communicate to you about how you're taking care of this huge collection of individual cells we call your body. How good of a leader are you for this body with all of its subjects that are subject to your um, women control? Well, the feedback comes in the form of physical sensations, such as hunger, thirst, fatigue, etc., pain, or emotions. All of these are symptoms. They are messages. They are all communicating something. They are being created by chemical messengers released by various cells that are triggering these reactions. And these are telling you about your physical and spiritual needs and warning you when you're doing something that's not taking care of it. Every signal has a proper response. When you're hungry, you have to eat. When you're thirsty, you have to drink. When you're tired, you need to rest. When you're restless, you need to get up and move. When you're cold, you need to warm up. When you're hot, you need to cool down. When you're afraid, you need to have some courage. When you're grieving, you need to let go. When you're angry, you need to learn to control yourself. All of these things, whether they're physical or emotional, are all communicating to you about, hey, you're not in balance here. Your homeostasis, either on a physical or mental, emotional, spiritual level, is not in balance, and you need to do something to bring it back into balance. You can't cheat nature. I had a woman bring her mother-in-law in from, not her mother-in-law, her mother from the nursing home as a client to see me. She was having certain symptoms which I don't remember. When I looked at her, she had a withered, dry tongue. She was puckery. I did a little test I do, and she was severely dehydrated. And all of her symptoms seemed to be me centered around the fact that she was dehydrated. She wasn't getting enough water. I told her she needs to drink water. She needs like about 5 or 6 glasses of water a day. She says she doesn't want water. She doesn't like the taste of water. She drank like 2 small cups of green tea every day. That's it. That's all, everything she drank. It was not enough. And and she said, "Can't you give her an herb to fix the problem since she doesn't want to drink the water?" Oh, well, I'd like you to try that with a plant. Let's say you got a plant and it's starting to get a little withered because you're not watering it regularly. Can I stick some kind of fertilizer or chemical in the soil that will take the place of water? No, it's ridiculous. You can't cheat nature. You can't you can't not give the system what it needs and give it something else instead and expect that to produce a state of balance internally. I like the essay Compensation by Ralph Waldo Emerson, who basically talks about this idea. Every excess causes a defect. Like, okay, eating is pleasurable, but you eat too much, it becomes unpleasurable. You get fat, you get indigestion, you get blah, blah, blah. Every defect in excess, every sweet hath its sour, every evil its good, every faculty which is a receiver of pleasure has an equal penalty put on it for abuse. It is to answer for its moderation with its life. Pleasure is taken out of pleasant things, profit out of profitable things, power out of strong things. Every faculty which is a receiver of pleasure has an equal penalty put on it for its abuse. You know, sleep too much, that's as much of a problem as not sleeping enough. Everything has to have balance. It's always trying to maintain that internal balance of homeostasis that we call health. So this leads us to looking at, okay, what are root causes? And I ran into this little poem by Samuel Thompson about his method, and it really struck me, and it caused an image to form in my mind, which I'm going to show you on the next page. But he said, let names of all disorders be like to the limbs joined to the tree. Work on the root, and that subdue, and all the limbs will bow to you. The limbs are colic, pleurisy, worms and gravel, gout and stone. Remove the cause, and they are gone. So I came up with this model, the disease tree. And this is a version I did in 2003, but I actually came up with this in the early 1980s, about 20 years before this version of it. And it basically is designed to illustrate what Henry David Thoreau said. There are 1,000 hacking at the branches of an evil to the one striking at the root. So basically, there's the idea on the bottom you see of constitution, and into our constitution or against our constitution come mental and emotional stresses, nutritional deficiencies, trauma that we do to the body by not taking care of it properly or getting it injured, toxins that are introduced into the body and not eliminated properly. And these environmental stressors start to give rise to disease. They throw the biological terrain or internal environment off in the body, weaken body systems, and as a result of the weakened body systems, various manifestations of disease begin to appear. When you're treating the diseases, you're treating the manifestations. When you go down and you look at the constitution, the actual environmental factors that are causing the damage, how the biological terrain is being affected and the body systems are being affected, you're now dealing with the deeper underlying problems that will allow you to actually fix the problem. So that means we can end with talking about a holistic approach based on this whole idea of health. So here again is the model, which if any of you attended my universal energetics class, this is one of my universal energetics models. The constitution or the internal environment is the yin element and the environment is the yang element. The disease symptoms are the imbalances arising from the imbalance between the environment and the constitution. Now let me explain that really briefly, okay? You have these people who were born with this really tough genetic constitution, and they eat pork fat and they smoke a pipe and they drink a shot of alcohol every day and they live to be 90. And then you have people who were born with weaker constitutions and they try to do that stuff and it knocks them for a loop. Let's suppose that you have inherited some problems with your liver, for example. Your liver has some inherent genetic weakness. It doesn't detoxify very efficiently. So you go to work in a plant where they use a lot of chemicals. Now maybe there are 10 of you working around those chemicals in that plant, and you're the one who gets sick. You're the one who develops hepatitis or some liver disease because of that chemical. The other people didn't. This explains why. Because you couldn't tolerate the environment and they had a strong enough liver that they could. It also explains why medications work on some people and not on others. Because some people's constitution, the medicine helps to balance. Other people's constitution, it doesn't. This is why it's very critical to look at constitution as part of the disease picture to get an idea of who is this person who has the disease. So when someone's asking me about how to fix a disease, I want to get to know the person who has the disease a little bit, about their health history, about what they've been prone to in the past, what are their health problems they may have. Ideally, if I'm seeing them in person, I can do some things to read their constitution using iridology or glandular body typing or so forth. And then I also want to get information about their diet, their lifestyle, etc., because it's in analyzing those things that I actually can come up with the remedy that creates a balance that counteracts the imbalance created by the disease symptoms. Again, that's the holistic model that I work with. Now, this is a critical concept. I got this idea from traditional Chinese medicine, and it relates to this idea. One disease may have many treatments. Because people have different constitutional strengths and weaknesses, an influence which makes one person ill won't affect someone else. The same symptom or disease may arise from multiple different causes. That is to say that a particular disease may have many different causes. Thus, the approach that works for one person for that disease will not work for another person who has that disease, because the cause is different. And that's why you always have the bell curve when you're doing research. Some people it works for, some people it doesn't. Some people it works in harmony with their constitution, others it doesn't. Now, just like one disease may have many different treatments, one treatment may cure many diseases, because the entire body is interconnected. Every system of the body affects every other system of the body. A problem in one organ or system will affect all organs and systems. One health issue may contribute to multiple diseases. Therefore, if fixing a particular health problem, a weak link in the body system, the body function, can actually help heal multiple ailments, because the underlying root cause of all those problems has been addressed. So let's look at that first. One disease, many treatments. So I put this little picture. Here's a woman suffering from depression, grieving, angry, whatever. Well, there could be many causes for this. There could be emotional causes. Maybe she lost someone close to her, or she had trauma or abuse, or maybe she's just burned out from chronic stress. Maybe she could have different physical health problems that are contributing to her distress: a toxic liver, leaky gut syndrome, low sex hormones, intestinal dysbiosis, and imbalance of the gut bacteria. Aging, dementia will cause depression. There could be a lack of certain things the body needs, like sunlight, B vitamins, a lack of exercise, vitamin D deficiency. There could be problems, genetic weaknesses in the body, or that are causing her to have lower levels of serotonin or dopamine, or a lower thyroid, or disturbed methylation. The fix for the depression is not just to alter the chemical messengers involved in signaling depression. It's to look at the whole picture, try to figure out where the causal problems are, and treat that. Example is headaches. Headaches have many causes, but a lack of analgesics is not one of them. The most common cause of headaches is dehydration. Did you know that? Most people would stop getting headaches if they just drink more water. Another really common cause of headaches in modern illness is poor posture. People are bent over looking at their cell phone. Their neck is leaning forward. The muscles in the back of their neck are trying to hold a bowling ball up against the weight of gravity, and they get tired and they tense up and they cause a headache. And I can tell you, I have had far fewer headaches and neck problems since I moved my computer monitor and stacked it up on things so it's at eye level and I'm not looking down on it when I'm working on the computer. Very simple thing. Food allergies can cause headaches. Magnesium deficiency can cause headaches. Liver congestion, stress can cause headaches. What's the cause? You can take analgesics to ease the pain, but people will have headaches over and over and over again and take analgesics over and over again. They're not getting well. The headache is signaling, the body is saying, I'm not happy. You're doing something to me that I don't like, or you're not giving me what I need. And when you figure it out, you'll fix it and it'll be gone and you won't have headaches anymore. Another example is high blood pressure. High blood pressure is a symptom. It can be due to deficiencies of wide variety of nutrients: magnesium, C, D3, K2, and other nutrients, chronic inflammation in the cardiovascular system, excess weight, kidney weakness and fluid retention, a lack of exercise, a high stress level, even unresolved mental and emotional grief that causes a person to emotionally withdraw from life will elevate their blood pressure. So normalizing blood pressure, getting rid of it, not just managing the symptoms with drugs, requires us to look at the situation and figure out what are the causal factors and address them. Now let's look at the one treatment, many diseases. Here are all the health problems that can happen if you have intestinal dysbiosis. That is, you have a lack, an improper balance of microbes in your gut that are creating small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or leaky gut syndrome. You can have other health problems like asthma and allergies and sinus problems and a weak immune system and lymphatic swelling and yeast infections in your toes and your vaginal area, or autoimmune diseases could develop. Or you could have a bunch of digestive symptoms like sugar cravings, diarrhea, food intolerance. Actually, the leaky gut is, I'm talking about coming from the intestinal dysbiosis, stomach pain, acid indigestion, bloating, gas, frequent belching. And you could even get mental and emotional symptoms like fatigue, brain fog, ADHD, autism, anxiety, and depression, all from imbalance in the gut microflora. Oh my goodness. We clear up the gut, we heal the gut, we get the balance of microbes right in the gut, and all of a sudden, a whole bunch of problems the person has disappears. One treatment, many diseases. So for example, stress management. If a person is just under a lot of stress, helping them fix their stress, learn how to deal with their stress, which was the theme I did in my member program this month, well, that I'm doing in my member program this month, could ease anxiety and depression, reduce their blood pressure, ease angina, fibrillations, or heart palpitations, improve their immune response, aid their recovery from cancer and autoimmune disorders, clear up skin conditions, aid sleep, aid weight loss, slow the aging process, and improve mental concentration. Reducing stress can help with all of those health problems. One treatment, many elements. Here's a big one I've been teaching for years, the hiatal hernia. I have a YouTube video that explains the problem of the hiatal hernia and another one that shows how to self-correct it. I show how to correct it on someone else and how to correct it on yourself. I've helped a lot of people with the hiatal hernia, and I found that it improved their digestion appetite and aided them when they weren't being able to get muscle. They weren't digesting protein properly. It reduces intestinal dysbiosis. The one from before could have the hiatal hernia causing the problems with the gut microbes. I've seen it ease angina and palpitations and arrhythmia because the stomach pushing up against the diaphragm can put pressure on the heart and cause the heart to have some problems. I've seen it help with acid reflux, even improve thyroid function because the esophagus can kink up by the thyroid, reducing blood flow to the thyroid. It definitely can ease asthma. This has been a major thing that I've done with helping people with asthma. It can help a person feel more calm and centered, improve their immunity and overall health, and it even can help them have better gut instincts to avoid situations that are harmful for them. One treatment, many elements. So, strategies. This is called strategies for healing. So, in my book, Strategies for Health, lay out 4 fundamental strategies for healing. And we are talking about changing our thought processes with this from disease care to health care. In disease care, we're seeing the disease as an invader, something that's apart from the person that is to be attacked or conquered. In healthcare, we're seeing the disease as a coping mechanism, attempting to maintain homeostasis in difficult situations. In disease care, the therapy is directed towards correcting the disease. In healthcare, the therapy is directed towards improving the person's health. Do you see the difference? We're trying to figure out what's going to make them healthier. In disease care, each disease is treated as if it were a separate and distinct entity. In healthcare, all health problems are seen as being part of an interconnected whole. Disease care, treatment choices are based on historical uses, we used this herb in the past to treat this or that or the other, or research, there have been studies that show that this herb is good for this or that. In healthcare, treatment choices are based on experience and research on what creates good health. How we use our remedies is applied not to manage the symptoms. Now, I want to mention, there is a role for symptomatic relief. I can help ease symptoms while a person's healing, but easing the symptom is just helping them feel a little better while we're getting them better. It's not a long-term fix, okay? I tell people, if you're out on the battlefield and a soldier is wounded and you give them a shot of morphine, that's really good symptomatic relief, okay? Well, hopefully you're going to get them to the field army medic and they're going to get patched up so they can recover. But meanwhile, easing their pain is not a bad thing, okay? But it's not going to fix them. It's just going to make them more comfortable. Freedom from disease is the goal in disease care. In other words, people want the disease to go away. If you're focused on healthcare, you want your health to be restored. It's a different mindset, and it causes you to look at things differently. Now, first strategy, believe you can get well. And I put this strategy first because I have found that all healing starts with belief. I may know full friggin' well things that a person could do to get well from a particular condition. But if they don't believe me, they won't even try. If you have bought into the idea that you have an incurable disease, that what you have is something that cannot be cured, you likely won't even try. You won't look for answers, and even if you hear answers, you're not going to try to do anything to act on them. You have to believe. And the belief actually has a direct impact on your health because, as I explain in the Strategies of Health book, there's not only a placebo effect, there is a nocebo effect. People will get better taking a sugar pill because they believe it's going to help them, but people will also get side effects from sugar pills being told that they're drugs with side effects. The brain is extremely powerful, and you need to learn to work with people in their belief. You need to help them believe they can get well. You need to help them have confidence in the healing power of their body. And a lot of times the reason they don't is because they have unresolved trauma, abuse, or stress, and that is causing them to have this self-sabotaging mindset. And here's the thing, you won't even be able to get them to follow through with a program if you can't get past this particular test. So some of the basic mental and emotional healing therapies that are discussed in my book are developing faith to be healed, which is using affirmation and visualization to start picturing yourself getting well or believing you can get well, developing a positive outlook on life, learning appropriate stress managing skills, getting counseling or other healing work that helps you deal with your past trauma or abuse. And there are also tools like flower essences and aromatherapy that can aid you in that process. That's step one. Step two, form healthy habits. Nothing is going to make up for you abusing your body. You have to start paying attention to, are you eating healthy? People know this. I know this. I have to constantly remind myself because it's so easy because of our culture, and all the people who are around us. Maybe your rest of your family doesn't want to eat healthy. I know my stepkids, they want white flour and they want sugar and they want all this other stuff. They don't want whole grains. They they don't want the honey or whatever. They want the other stuff. So we're surrounded by this, and we have to work on this all the time. And so the first thing we need to consider: are we having a healthy diet? Then after that we've got things like: are we getting enough sleep? Are you getting enough exercise? Do you have good posture? Are you drinking enough water? Remember I mentioned the water thing. Also, Are you avoiding harmful substances, things that are damaging your body? Do you perhaps need to fast or detoxify? And the way you do this is not by studying disease, but by studying health. I've been far more interested in this idea of what is a healthy, natural way to live than I am in trying to understand all these diseases and how to cure them. I recently saw a program on Netflix, which I highly recommend if you can watch it, called Live to Be 100, studying these factors that for these populations in the world that have a lot of people who live to be over 100 and a lot of people who live to be old and are very healthy. And of course, part of it is diet, part of it is physical activity, but there were two other things they uncovered that were really critical. One was long-lived people tend to have a sense of purpose, a meaning. They have a reason for living, something that they're doing that they feel is contributing to the world. And also they tend to have community, something we often very much lack in modern society, caught up with our cell phones and our computers. They have friends, they have family, they have sociality. And all those four factors turned out to be very critical in living to a long life. So as you study health and you learn, okay, what constitutes a healthy diet, then you can start to see how is a particular person deviating from that. So Scudder put it this way: we must study the living man and learn to recognize every manifestation of his life by our senses. Disease is wrong life, and a wrong presupposes a right. In other words, if there's a wrong way of doing it, there's a right way of doing it. To determine the existence of a wrong, we must know what the right is. If you don't know what the right is, how do you recognize what's wrong? So if you don't know what is healthy diet, what is a proper amount of sleep, what is a proper amount of water to be drinking, what's appropriate exercise, etc., then how do you tell when a person is deviating from that? Okay? This is diagnosis. In other words, I don't call it diagnosis. I call it health assessment. First of all, because it's legally better, but also because it's really what you're doing. You're assessing the level of a person's health and what they can do to improve their health. Spend more time studying health than you spend studying disease. I call working on this aspect treatment by prevention. And I've got this idea from Samuel Thompson too. That same thing that will prevent disease will cure it. In other words, the things that you should have done in the first place to stay healthy will also cure you. Doesn't that make sense? It makes perfect sense to me. If something is healthy, it's healthy. Are drugs healthy? If a Samuel Thompson put it this way, how can that which will kill a well rat cure a sick man? How can that which will kill a well hog cure a sick man? For when a farmer wishes to kill a rat, he poisons him. When a doctor wishes to cure a sick man, he poisons him. He was talking about the use of strychnine as a medicine, which was also used as rat poison, which, by the way, is what blood thinners are. Some blood thinners. I mean, you basically mix the blood thinning drug with food, and then the mice eat it, and then it thins out their blood so much that they dehydrate and die. So you're just giving the proper amount of poison to thin out the blood. Too much will start to kill you. How can something that would make a healthy person sick make a sick person well? Well, it doesn't. It manages symptoms. That's the whole point. It manages symptoms. What we need to learn to do is what is it that's going to create health? There's no shortcut. You can't cheat it. That's not a popular message. I mean, the problem I have, and I know this is a problem, is this isn't the message that the average person wants to hear. The average person wants the idea that, okay, I don't want to have to change. I want to eat and drink and do whatever I want, and I want you to make me healthy. It doesn't work that way. It will never work that way. All you're doing is masking the symptoms that your health is declining because you're abusing your body. If you're unwilling to change your behavior, you're going to keep sowing the same seeds, you're going to keep reaping the same results. And that's been defined as insanity. So our goal needs to be learn about health, and we need to guide people to a healthier life, which will automatically cure their diseases. Now, step 3, some basic supplements. This idea came from a conversation I had with Dr. Hugo Rodier and my good friend, Dr. Kimberly Ballas, a naturopath, over lunch in Salt Lake after a conference we were at. And what Dr. Rodier talked about is that he basically, as a holistic medical doctor, people would come in and he would give them some dietary changes that they needed to make and a few basic supplements to start taking to rebalance their body and tell them come back in 30 days. And when they came back in 30 days, if they followed the program, half of their health problems would be gone. And then he could figure out what he needed to do with the rest of it. And we talked about it, and we came up with a list of basic supplements that, along with some appropriate diet lifestyle changes, will help most people get back on track for health. And this was the result of that. And so these are 7 basic supplements that you should consider as a starting place in nutrition. Digestive enzymes, which are something I have to take at my age. I just seem to have not be producing the same digestive secretions. And if I take digestive enzymes regularly, I'm much healthier. My gut is much healthier. And if I don't, I start having problems. Minerals, vitamins, essential fatty acids, your omega-3 essential fatty acids, which most people are not getting enough of. Probiotics to balance gut flora, fiber, for colon health, and antioxidants to prevent oxidative damage and inflammation. These are some basic supplements most people can consider. And I talk about these and who needs them and why. And here's the way I look at it. There's this thing called the 80-20 rule, which is that 20% of your effort produces 80% of your results. Well, I liken this basic supplement idea and some of these basic things that I'm teaching as the 20% that gets 80% of your results. The rest of your knowledge that you're going to acquire, the other 80% is going to get 20% of your results. It's what you need to deal with the really tough cases. So always leverage the big guns before you start trying to do the minor tweaking. And the minor tweaking is selecting specific remedies. But years ago, I learned to select remedies not based on the disease. Instead, I select remedies based on 2 things: imbalance in the biological terrain, that's the trunk of the tree, and body systems that aren't doing their job. That's the main branches of the tree. In other words, I'm trying to go deeper. And what I'm trying to do with these more specific remedies is I'm trying to speed up or accelerate the process by which I nudge the body back into homeostasis, back into the normal functioning condition of the body. I want to close with these ideas from Henry Beeler, a medical doctor who for 70 years treated most of his clients with food, diet. And he says, really, there is no specific medicine which is a specific or remedy for any chronic disease. In other words, he's saying it's a myth to think that if you have a chronic disease like arthritis or asthma or anything like that, there is some medicine that's going to make it go away. All you're ever going to be doing is treating symptoms that way. Then he goes on, health is achieved by following the laws of nature. When you break them, illness results. Health is not bestowed upon you by a beneficent nature at birth. It is achieved and maintained only by active participation in well-defined rules of healthful living, rules you may be disregarding every day. Again, this is not, the message that so many want to hear. You know, the magic pill, the magic remedy, here's the cure for this disease for you, or here's the cure of that disease for you. But it's the truth. And I'm on a mission to try to get the truth out to as many people who are willing to listen as possible. I'm not the only person who teaches these things, and I'm not the only person who people can go to get help with these things. But I've taken it upon myself as kind of a mission that I really want to educate people on these things, and I really want to educate practitioners who are trained to think this way. So I want to talk about how you can learn more about this approach. Honestly, this is the part of this that I dislike the most, which is self-promotion. But I need to do it because I really want to get this out there. And if I don't tell people about what we've got, they're not going to have a chance to do this. So first of all, this is the entire approach in my Strategies for Health book, which I need to get more people aware of this book because I'd like to get this book into the hands of more people. It utilizes this approach, and you can buy it on Barnes and Noble or Amazon.com, and it's going to help you learn this kind of technique. It goes through multiple ailments, talks about different things that can cause those ailments, has the basic 4 strategies we talked about, and then it has a bunch of more specific strategies that are linked to other ailments, diets, different healing techniques and so forth that work on a broad variety of complaints. Now, in order to help people do this better, I am working with a course, the Strategic Herbal Consulting course. There are 5 modules. Actually, I changed a little bit. There are not all modules have 8 lessons. I kind of broke it up a little differently, but there'll be a total of 40 classes, 20 classes a year over the next 2 years, a certificate of completion for each module, and a final certificate for completing all 5. And the program is going to be part of our member program. I only want to sell one thing really, other than my books, which is our member program. And I'm going to be doing a lot of more YouTube videos, a lot more free content for people. And so rather than set up a Patreon, I decided if people want to support what I'm doing, the member program is it, and you'll get the benefit of this class, which actually this is a really good value, $20 a month or 168 if you pay by the year. And you'll also get our monthly member theme. We have a webinar every month on a particular health theme where I go into depth on that particular health theme, and they'll have a newsletter on it. We have a library of over 100 previous webinars on many topics. Actually, it's probably around 200. You can create a member profile to promote yourself. And we will be the more members we have, the more we can work to improve the content. We have a lot of other plans for doing things to help people with applying this material. So if you're interested in learning more, you can get the book, and you can also, if you'd like, join our member program and get more of this type of education. There is a Strategies for Health brochure that outlines all 40 lessons, all the 5 modules and the 40 lessons you'll learn in the class. The feedback I get most consistently from people is you make things easy to understand. I don't talk over people's heads. I don't use scientific gobbledygook. If I am using scientific terms, I very carefully define them because I really want people to understand. And so people have commented that you're always very clear, easy to understand. And of course, you can always ask questions, and I'm always happy to answer and help people understand, as well as the fact that I use a particular model of learning and teaching, and I'm building this course around that model, which actually helps people grasp and retain the information better than your traditional learning systems. You sign up for the member program at stephenhorn.com, and there's a little button at the top that says membership, and you click on that, and the sign up is there on the website. My website again is stephenhorn.com. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to learn more, you can sign up for my free newsletter in the links below, or join my member program, which is also in the links below, as well as links to buying my books and getting other resources to learn more about how to use natural healing in a way that really promotes and builds health rather than just treats disease.